Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our instantly after the episodes reaction of ANDOR Season 2. This is Arc 2. This is episodes 4, 5, and 6. 4 is Never Been to Gorman. Episode 5 is I Have Friends Everywhere. And 6 is What a Festive Evening.
Oh, no.
Which is what critics said multiple times.
Yeah.
If you are new around here, we're talking about what we just watched. So we're reacting to what we just watched. We talk about the themes and things. We're not going to be all the little details and stuff, although there's some details I did catch in this one. And we're going to kind of wander all over the place. However, we're not going to wander as much as we did last week.
Okay.
Because this is all about Gorman.
Yes.
Last week we had 4 different arcs, all getting everybody in the position so we can get to the Gorman stuff. And I think that now that I've watched this 3-episode arc, I understand the decisions they made in the 3-episode arc to start the season.
Okay.
We had to have Deirdre and Cyril. Mr. Karn. We had to get them on the same page doing things. We needed to explain the ISB. We had to kind of get Mon Mothma through the stress of a wedding to show where she is now in the Senate. And maybe on the same page as Perrin. I don't know how I feel about all that.
Well, I mean, they've been married for a long time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, I think that it's just back to business as usual for them.
Yeah, now it's just the two of them.
Yeah.
And the daughter's gone.
Yeah.
We had to explain last week kind of where Cassian is in his devotion to the cause.
Well, I think that we didn't end necessarily devoted to the cause. We didn't end this 3-episode arc with him. I think it's more like the first 3 were kind of him out on his own, and under Luthen's tutelage, kind of.
Yeah.
And this was more of him kind of being his own man.
Yeah.
And choosing Biggs, which I think is gonna rip our heart out the next.
Oh yeah,
the next 3
We're
episodes.
gonna get into Biggs. We're gonna get into Luthen a lot. And then we had the whole Ferrix crew last week trying to live a simple life, and the Empire stepped in. And now that we lost Brasso last week, this episode starts with the first episode of this season of this arc starts with showing Bix being tortured. And when that all happened, I was like, oh boy, we're losing Bix. And that's not who we lost in this 3-episode arc. So I want to try to... Everything that happens in this arc is about the People's Liberation Army of Gorman.
Yeah, and them trying to fight back because they've already been invaded. I mean, that's not quite the word for it, but they've already had the Empire come. They have a statue in the middle of the square, commemorating these people that died in this, little tiny rebellion that happened last time. So, most of them are like, this isn't gonna happen again, except.
And now the Empire's building a giant building overlooking the square where all that will happen.
Right. Yeah. So, I find it interesting that they have spent so much time and are gonna. I mean, I assume in the next three, we're gonna actually at least hear about the destruction
Yeah.
of Gorman.
I agree.
So it's like, why? It's got to be a catalyst for someone, for Cassian.
So this is where one of those times where, being the Super Star Wars fan, I know it's going to happen. Not more than just Rogue One. The Gorman massacre is mentioned in multiple places throughout publishing and other media, specifically Rebels. And it's the thing that breaks Mon Mothma's back to leave the empire, leave her Senate seat, and become the head of the thing, of the rebellion. And so it's always been talked about, kind of secondhandly or in hush rumors or whatever, about what happened on Gorman.
Right.
And so,
because only a handful of people are really going to know the truth, and that handful of people we just watched, Cyril knows because he was there, and Cassian and Luthen, so there's a very small amount of people, and Val, there's only a handful of people that are gonna know the truth, so it would just be rumors, as to everybody else.
And that's one of the things that had always been, one of the things I love about Star Wars is that they say something, and then down the line they come back and explore that.
Yeah,
it's been happening since the first 15 minutes of Star Wars, not A New Hope, of Star Wars, when Obi-Wan talks about the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And Luke said, "Oh, you fought in the Clone Wars?" And all of us were like, that's just a random line. Come back around 20, 30 years later, we get the prequel. We get the prequels. We get the Clone Wars animated series that deals with a lot of that. And so this idea of the Gorman massacre has always kind of been in the background. And so I love that they're coming back around and trying to tell that story of how that's actually the catalyst to the real rebellion really getting organized.
Yeah.
And I have thoughts about Luthen. Now, Luthen was one of my favorite characters last season. His devotion to the cause and what he was willing to do. I was willing to gloss over some of the decisions that he was making because we know that that's where we need to go with as to step up against the Empire. That's kind of, we needed to have this kind of character, much like Saw. We'll get into Saw too, but his character last season was like kind of a fist pump. Like, yeah, I'm with him because he's leading this rebellion. He is now in this season, especially in this arc, willing to give up everyone and everything, with or without their permission or knowledge, for the greater good. And he's not entirely wrong, but I want to punch him in the pee-pee.
Well, his heart's in the right place as far as, but his mind isn't,
Yeah.
I mean, he thinks he's doing it for the greater good, but he's lost his way.
He's very much lost his way. And it's one of the things that happens with Mon Mothma when she becomes like the face of the rebellion is that she always believes in the end does not justify the means.
Right, yeah.
Sacrificing one person is not the way to do this.
Right.
Sacrificing, now people may need to do sacrifices, but I'm not going to put people into places where they are forced to sacrifice themselves.
Right, yeah. And I think that Luthen is just kind of showing, I mean, he even said, was it in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, episode 5, that he was tired, and you're doing this for so long, and watching people die, putting them in harm's way, you just become desensitized to it all.
Yeah.
And he's, tired. I mean, he's got like this multiple lives going on.
Yeah.
And many lies, all kind of going on at the same time. So, and he even snaps at, I don't remember his assistant's
Lisa?
name.
Lisa?
Lisa.
I think it.
Yeah, you
keep
just
talking about
it. It's back up
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, I'm just making sure we get the right person. Keep talking.
Okay. He even kind of snaps at her about the bug in the art piece.
Yeah,
and she's like, you signed off on it, but he's like, he's forgotten probably more than he remembers at this point.
That was one of the things I wanted to bring up, is that I loved that scene because he's been relying on her so much, because he's told so many lies that he can't keep track of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been told from people who actually do this kind of thing on a regular basis is that liars need to use at least a little bit of truth to keep their lies straight.
Yeah. Or it makes it a more convincing lie.
Or it makes it a more convincing lie and stuff like that. And I have never, ever lied in my entire life. So I've read a book, or I had a book read to me about lying.
He was a perfect child.
I was a perfect child. But because he's got so many fires and pans and fingers and pies and strings and things, I use all the metaphors because they're all true.
Yeah.
And so he's pushed very thin right now, and because of that, he is desensitized himself. He even talks about it in that big long speech last season about, I've made my heart a soulless place, or sunless place.
Yeah.
And so that idea that he's disconnected himself from the humanity of all these decisions makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But because of that, he's lost the true meaning of what the actual rebellion is, and that is to let people live their lives as they need to be left.
Right.
Be left alone by this fascist rule of the empire. And so I'm so angry with him and his complete and utter just disregard to anybody outside of the actual cause. It's frustrating as hell.
Well, which
is why he's such a great character to watch.
And he doesn't even care about the people that are in the rebellion, because he's trying to pit Biggs and Cassian against each other, and he put Val and Cinta in harm's way, and Cinta ends up getting killed because of spoilers because of it. When Cassian came back and said, we should not do this. This is not, they don't know what they're doing. It's not, just leave it alone. And he couldn't. And so, he doesn't, I don't think he really cares about anyone at this point right now. He just doesn't have
it's the cause and only the cause.
Yeah.
And everyone else can be damned.
Yeah.
And that's very frustrating to watch, because we rooted for him so much last season.
Yeah.
But that's why he's so intriguing. That's why we keep coming back to the show, is because he's making decisions that, let's be honest, 99.5% of us aren't going to be willing to make.
Right.
But you need that person like him to make those kind of decisions when you have to go against this oppressive fascist regime that is holding everyone down, including those who work in the system.
Right.
And so I've been fascinated with him, but I just wanted to kick him in the pee-pee after this set of episodes. Let's talk about the Gorman Liberation Front. That's not what they're called. That's what I'm calling them until we were told differently.
It's a bunch of tailors.
It's a bunch of tailors, yeah. Tinker, tailor, soldier, spy. So we had the 1 year gap like we knew was going to come from the previous 3-episode arc, and it says 1 year later, which I really appreciate that they remind everybody it's been a year. The propaganda of Gorman about how they're bad people and everything is working, because Edie has a call with Cyril. Cyrill.
Cyril. Actually, it's Syril.
Is only one L?
Syr. Yeah.
Sir.
Cyril.
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 Abby or Ellie. Just should watch those reviews too. Their phone call was being tapped by the Gorman Liberation Front.
Right.
And
Cyril knew.
And Cyril knew because he's a plant by Deidre and the ISB and this secret mission to make it possible to get everybody off of Gorman so they can mine the planet until it's dead.
Right.
So where was I going with all this?
So he was telling Edie. She was telling him.
Yeah. She was telling him about how bad the Gormans are, and she was kind of berating him a little bit about getting demoted to this job compared to what he was doing. She can't know that what he's doing is what. But she was believing in the propaganda. She was believing in this idea that the Gormans themselves were bad people.
Yep.
There is no indication anywhere, and currently as everything has been presented, that they're not anything but artists, designers, and overall good people who like a good coffee shop. and so this propaganda, they even talked about it when Cassian went, and he starts getting questioned by one of the people that's part of the Liberation Front, and she doesn't know what she's doing. She's having open conversations with him instead of keeping in character. And she asks him how, a year ago, you couldn't get a table here. There's a line out front and all the hotels were busy.
Yep.
And now we have to deal with this. She doesn't call it lies, but she definitely does say it's untruthitudes.
Yeah.
And that is allowing the ISB to perpetuate more and more imperial things happening on Gorman.
Right.
So when they go to steal the actual guns that are going in the building, that's going to be an armory and not just an office building, like they've been told, going against the Imperial Charter, that's the thing that they've been trying to get to. That's the thing the ISB has been trying to get to.
Right.
And so just having this idea of putting the idea in its inception. The total thing that the ISB has been doing is inception.
Right. Well, it happens in real life.
Right. We were going there. But they have pushed so many buttons and done so many things, the ISB, that the Gormans became the thing that the ISB told everybody that they are, or are on the path to.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know that rebelling against what's going on makes you what they say you are. I don't.
That's fair.
I don't think that makes them horrible people.
No, I don't think so. But in the eyes of the Empire, it does. Because they reacted the way that they wanted to react, now they have legal reason to put more forces there.
Sure.
And so they got what they wanted, despite maybe some other things going on in the background with them not wanting to follow orders, wanting to do their own thing, like they weren't willing to listen to Val and Senta because they thought they knew what they were doing, and it come to find out they had no idea what they were doing,
Right.
and that's why Senta dies meaninglessly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Val's
Because they told them no one but the two of them, Val and Cinta, have blasters. Nobody. No exceptions. Nobody has a blaster, and the one kid who was on guard duty took a blaster.
yeah,
And
told the guy who was at the town hall meeting, who was the one like fighting and rolling everybody up.
I was like, why are you like pushing so hard? I mean, I get it. You didn't want him in there, but to pull a blaster on him, he's on your side.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the naivete, that's a big word for Elmo, of this particular group of rebels. Because they aren't fighters. They're not, they're artisans. They're designers. They're rich, yes, because they're providing this clothing for the galaxy, but they have no idea how to handle these situations.
Yeah.
And so when he pulls that gun, I was like, this is going to go bad. I didn't think it was going to be Senta, but like I knew somebody was going to die in this
I
episode.
knew it was going to be one of the two of them.
One of the two of them, once they got back together.
Yeah.
And they had their heartfelt, like, I had an accident. I told Luthen not to tell you.
Yeah.
There's another show, Last of Us, who's dealing with the ramifications of not telling the other person something.
Yep.
And that was one of those scenes where it's like, come on, just, you're hurt. Your loved one is out there. Tell them. And maybe she did tell Luthen, and Luthen said it wasn't a good idea because she was on some mission. And that's another reason why Luthen is just the worst right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they even say, maybe we should, like, they said something about Luthen knowing or...
Yeah.
And because they said, well, maybe we should make him... or talk to him about that.
Yeah.
So
Luthen thinks we're better apart than we are together.
Yeah.
So the other thing too that comes out of the attack on the transport and them stealing the guns is that's also falling into Luthen's plans.
Right.
And after Cassian goes there, has a bad meeting, decides it's not worth it because they really don't know what they're doing, and him and Luthen have it out on the ship on the flight back. And Luthen said they would be... Imagine having the Gormans on our side. A rich planet with a resource with the sympathy of the people. It makes a ton of sense to have them on our side.
Yeah.
And Luthen says, but what if they fail? And then Luthen says, and then they will burn brightly. So Luthen wants one of two results. He wants the Gormans on our side for their resources, for their people, for their money, and all that, all those reasons. And all of those reasons make complete sense. Or he wants the actual massacre that's coming.
Right.
Because that will be the thing that's the beacon for everybody else.
Right. As far as he's concerned, it's a win-win situation. Either outcome will be profitable, be a positive thing for the rebellion.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and Cassian said, "I want to set this one out." Then,
yeah,
like I really appreciated that. At least in this arc, Cassian is more concerned about being with Bix.
Yeah.
Than actually being in the actual rebellion. Now he still wants to, like he calls Luthen out on his poo a little bit by saying, "I'm here. I want," like when Cassian goes to the antique shop.
Yeah.
That whole scene, like, I'm here. I told you I wanted to be. I want to be in, but at what cost? Like, are you willing to, like, you want me to give up my blood? I'm willing to give up my blood, but I'm not willing to give away who I am as a person,
Yeah.
and my caring for other people,
Yeah.
that you've lost. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't say that, but we all.
But yeah, that's exactly, and Luthen's probably taking it out on him a little bit because Cassian is trying to have all the things that Luthen has decided he can't.
Yeah.
Or has, I don't know. I think he could, but he chooses not to.
I have made my heart a sunless place.
Right.
I keep coming back to that line because that's...
He's at least there, he admitted that he's like losing his humanity. I think at this point he's just kind of lost it altogether.
Yeah. Cassian, even though the show is called Andor, these two arcs so far, we haven't had a ton of Cassian time. And I'm okay with that because we know what Cassian, who he ultimately becomes.
Well, I think the next one will be, because we still have to get K2.
Yeah.
So there's got to be...
That's going to be very heavy with the two of them.
Yeah. There's got to be at least, there's got to be some build up and some connection and stuff between him and K2.
This arc began with Bix having a nightmare about Dr. Grost, and his torture that she went through at his hands. And she takes the gun and to the living room, and there's a younger person who's dead, and the doctor's kind of rubbing it in her face and whatever. And Cassian takes the gun from her and shows that what she thinks she's seeing is not actually happening.
Right.
So Cassian goes on the Gorman trip, comes back, and has a moment with Bix about having... Bix is having nightmares, depression, like her... PTSD, yeah. Her laying on the futon on the floor watching trashy daytime television.
Yeah. With like an ice cream container.
Yeah. Bix's arc through what happened last season and then this season so far is heartbreaking because she's a strong person, a strong woman who's had terrible things happen to her and attempted terrible things to happen to her after the Imperial trying to be Imperial last week. And so her PTSD is deep, but she's trying to work through it on her own.
Yeah.
And when Cassian leaves to go to Gorman, she's self-medicating to help her sleep, to kind of release those demons from her head. But as Luthen points out, it works for a while, and then it's not enough anymore.
Right. And everything's just worse when you're not taking whatever it is she's taking. In Star Wars lexicon, it's spice, but it could be anything. So when the 3-episode arc ends, we get Bix's revenge. Pendergast tells two of the ISB officers that Gorsh's interrogation system is being looked at by the Imperial... It's not the ISB, it's the Imperial Intelligence Agency. Like it's like their rival group. It's the FBI and CIA kind of thing. Right.
And he tells them that they need to watch what's going on and that they're going to expand it into a department. That's just what he's doing. So Gorst is on Coruscant. That's a big word for Elmo too. On Coruscant, and he's going to work with his little cake.
Yeah.
Sets it on the console, and Bix is there, throws him in the chair, and puts the thing on him, and turns it to 11.
Yeah, and he's like, I know you. Where do I know you from? And then she whispers in his ear before she puts the headset on that this will feel like forever to you or eternity to you or whatever. And he's like, Oh, and then she
with the muzzle on, by the way, too.
Yeah. Yep.
And then she leaves the building, and Cassian joins her, and they blow up the building.
Yep.
That's their own mission. That's not a Luthen mission.
Yeah. No, and we're not gonna get like immediate ramifications of that in the next block, arc, whatever, because each three episode arc is 1 year. So next week will be a year from now.
Yeah.
So I mean, they blew up a building on Coruscant.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. It's a huge deal. It's gonna have very interesting ramifications for everyone in that area of actual Coruscant. There's going to be more stormtroopers. There's going to be more Imperial officers.
Yeah.
There's going to be
and they're going to have to get
security.
I mean, they're going to have to get off the planet immediately, which was fine. They were in a hideout house, in a safe house, whatever. Bix wanted out of there anyway, so I think they're both going to be fine with that. But I think they have now probably severed ties with Luthen. But then that Cassian ends back up with her name just left me.
Mon Mothma.
Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that happens.
I want to talk about Mon Mothma. I like the montage of her trying to get votes to stop whatever new legislation is going in against the Gormans. And her showing her trying to work the program with each of the different senators.
Including the senator from Gorman, who was just like, no, we need to not ruffle the waters. And it's like, dude.
Yeah. I love that montage because that's how our Senate in the States works. You have to somebody's got a bill they want to pass and they need to go get votes and for everything. And so her going through the political process of trying to save the Gormans, and then the Gorman senator not even lifting a finger to help himself, makes the decision by the Gorman Liberation Front even more impactful because they are at least trying to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
So Mon having to deal with all of that is really is I love that they took that beat. I love that they took that moment to show that even though she doesn't feel like it's going to happen, she's still fighting the good fight.
Yeah, and it builds on her arc of going from a senator to the head of the rebellion.
Right.
Because you have to see her deterioration, I guess.
Yeah.
Because she is, we've got to do this the right way through the Senate, through, legislation, and you see how she's just beating her head against the wall. So that when you get there, you understand her kind of motivation.
Yeah. It's after everything that happened last week with Tay and losing her daughter and Luthen in her ear every 5 seconds saying all of Luthen stuff, and now she's in the Senate and nobody's willing to see what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be that person to have Emperor Orange person come after them in the news and they won't stand up to it because we don't want to run our news article. We don't want to vote against him because we're afraid he's going to do ramifications against it.
Well, and half of it was that, and then half of it was there was a lot of, especially in the background, like people talking about, well, the Emperor would never let this kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
And the Emperor has everybody's best interest in heart. And you're like, I mean, we have the luxury of hindsight. We know that we know where this is going.
Right.
But and so it makes sense. Yeah, you're going to have one side going, this is bad, this is going to go bad, and then the other side going, oh, it's fine, they have our best interest at heart.
And we talked about this a little bit last week with the upper crust of society in the galaxy aren't being directly affected
right.
by those things that are happening.
Right.
And so
they don't want to ruffle them.
They don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
I did not have the verbal jousting fest between Mon Mothma and Orson Krennic.
That was amazing.
I want that a whole episode, and I think if they would have done the 5-year, the 5-season thing, that might have been an entire episode of them at the art show, just back and forth.
Yeah,
because he brought up they were talking about some imperial or some resistance, something that happened, and the Empire went in there and kind of smushed it pretty easily. And they were talking about how the two different sides, Mon's side, Orson Krennic's side, about like who they like, how they judged what actually happened and how the history of it was told.
Yeah,
and Krennic brought up the whole, well, they skinned people alive or whatever, and she's like, well, some people would consider that defending themselves. It was like that whole back and forth was just awesome. But the stress of that scene of them trying to get the bug out, because they had bugged douchebags art thing to get information, like that whole just back and forth with all of that was just really well done. I really appreciate it, but it actually adds another layer to unnecessary risks that are being taken by Luthen. Like, there's no... I won't say there's no need for that there, but it definitely puts him in a bad spot when things happen that he can't control. And this was one of those things where he couldn't control what actually happened when the provenance of the art pieces were being questioned.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that he can not control Cassian the way he wants to, or Val after what happens to Cinta. So there's going to be that whole layer of things. Saw with Will building the Rhydonian bomb. The Rhydonian is like super explosive fuel within the Star Wars universe. They built this bomb with the guy who plays the Lannister twins in House of the Dragons, or at least that's what he looked like. And they come to find out he was... Oh, sorry. Not Will, but the other guy was a spy. And they leave the planet that they were on, which was Dakar, which is the Resistance base in the sequel trilogy. So it was a nice little kind of tie to the sequel trilogy that we get back around to that after we got the Yavin base one last week.
I was going to say that.
But them pumping the fuel into what I think is the water line for wherever they're at, wherever that was. And then Saw getting high on the fumes. But the big thing about that was he was talking about his home planet. And his home planet, when we got introduced to Saw, was in the Clone Wars. And part of the reason the way he is so radicalized about going against the Empire is he was a separatist, and Anakin and Ahsoka went there to help their little tribe try to fight the Imperials, and that had been taking over their planet, and he loses his sister in that process. And so he becomes very radicalized and goes against the separatist through all of that, and then ultimately goes against the Empire. Forrest Whitaker, anytime on screen as Saw Gerrera, yes, please. I'm here for all of that. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was, unfortunately, Jimmy Smits could not come back as Bail Organa. They tried and tried and tried and tried to make it work, but just things didn't work out the way they wanted to, and so they had Benjamin Bratt come in and play Bail Organa,
which is a good choice.
It's a great choice. I'm very disappointed that Jimmy couldn't be, like, he loves that character. He'll
Yeah.
always show up when he can. He just couldn't. But Benjamin Bratt could show up in, like, another series somewhere as Dale Organa. Like, they could be brothers. It would totally work out.
They. I don't know if it sounds bad or not, but they're somewhat interchangeable. In like they look a lot alike.
Yeah, same mannerisms.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen in Hollywood, where there's 3 versions of the same person. You did go down to the celebrity, the actor look-alike portal down on the internet every once in a while. They get like, oh my god, they cloned 3 of the same person. One of them is called Natalie. One of them is called. I want to also talk about those before we get out of here. We're doing pretty good. There were some questions about the 3-episode arc concept. And we talked about this a little bit last week, and it felt a little disjointed last week with the 4 different stories going on for the 3 different episodes. And it was like they wanted to do all that building up of all that stuff to kind of get us into the meat of the story, which is the Gorman stuff, which is going to happen over this arc, and then probably feels like the next arc too. Now that we've had another 3 episodes and it was pretty much all one overall story going on, all focused on Gorman, do you feel a little bit better about how they're doing this compared to last week, or do you just not really? Did it really not affect you last week?
I didn't have a problem with it last week.
Okay, I've had some people reach out to me that were struggling against that way they presented it last week, and I was like, okay, if you don't remember, we took 3 episodes last season for Andor to get kind of going.
Yeah.
And so it's like just give it a second. They had to do this work, this building blocks to get to the big heavy stuff later on.
Then the other way to do it would have been that those 3 episodes would have been week to week, and it would have been
really rough.
It would have been even longer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I tried to tell the people that were kind of asking me about it was, because they're doing this 3-episode arc per night, it sucks for us who are doing reactions to it. But for the storytelling process, I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
I like that we didn't have the first episode of Andor, the 45 or 50 minutes or whatever it was, and then a week to discuss, this is not nearly as good as last year.
Yeah.
And it's like, they haven't done anything yet. They had to do kind of tell you where you're at. And that's one of the things that I don't miss about week-to-week storytelling. I really like the binge model. And this kind of feels like a happy medium between the two.
Well, it changes. The week-to-week thing works great when you're talking about sitcoms or the story of the week, the monster of the week, the bad guy of the week, whatever. But when you start to get into things like, more, I guess, modern series, where nothing is resolved, and you can have a whole episode where by itself nothing really happens.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
But by itself, nothing happens in that episode because it's a bunch of stuff setting up for 3 or 4 episodes down the line.
Yeah.
It's changed the way storytelling series happen.
And and if this was 7 episodes like The Last of Us, like you can't have that 1-hour episode of doing building. You got to do building and action and kind of get going. Like you have to. There's only 7 episodes. You can't like mess around.
Right.
So here, because we have 12 episodes, 12-hour-long episodes or more, probably towards the end of the season, we'll probably have a little bit longer episodes. But we had to spend that time in that one episode. So giving us this 3-episode arc, it was a little disjointed with all the different stories going on, cutting back and forth. This felt much more of, here's the movie of the week that they kind of were telling us about.
Right. Well, I mean, you have a lot of moving pieces that you had to get back to and say, this is where all these people, all these players are now a year later.
Yeah, and now we got to move them to the places on the board to get them to go forward with the actual story and stuff. But I really love in this experiment that Lucasfilm and Disney Plus are doing with this. I don't know if I want it all the time.
Yeah.
But I do like it for the purposes of this kind of storytelling. And so I think it's everything. We've got, I think, everything, pretty much all the major stuff. If you like this style of long form talk about episodes and stuff, let us know in the comments down below. If you're on the Spotify side, please follow us there and share with your friends. If you're on the YouTube side, please hit the bell for notifications and what's the other thing? Hit the subscribe button. All that kind of things. And then all the social media stuff. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. I'm writing for the Geekiary. All those links are in the description down below. Till next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.